The Lotus Sutra, Chapter 11, The Appearance of a Jeweled Stupa. At that time, there appeared before the Buddha a 7-jeweled stupa, 500 yojanas in height, and 250 yojanas both in length and width, which emerged from the ground and hovered in the air. It was adorned with various jewels, had 5,000 railings, and thousands of myriads of chambers. It was decorated with innumerable flags and banners and hanging jeweled necklaces, and myriads of kotis of jeweled bells hung from the top. The fragrance of tamala leaves and sandalwood trees exuded from all sides of the stupa, covering the world. The banners and umbrellas were composed of the 7 jewels, such as gold, silver, lapis lazuli, mother of pearl, agate, pearl, and ruby, and they rose as high as the palaces of the world protectors of the 4 quarters. The 33 devas rained down heavenly mandarava flowers in homage to the jeweled stupa. The other thousands of myriads of kotis of humans and such non-humans as devas, nagas, yaksas, Gandharvas, Asuras, Garudas, Kimnaras, and Maharagas also respected, honored, revered, and praised the precious stupa by offering all kinds of flowers, perfumes, necklaces, flags, banners, and music. Then a tremendous voice issued forth in praise from the jeweled stupa, saying, "Splendid, splendid, O Sakyamuni! The Bhagavat teaches the Lotus Sutra to the great assembly, the instruction for bodhisattvas and treasured lore of the Buddhas, which is the wisdom attainable by every sentient being. Just so, O Sakyamuni Bhagavat, what you teach is true." Thereupon, the fourfold assembly saw the great jeweled stupa hovering in the air, and also heard the voice that issued forth from the stupa. They were all pleased with the teaching, and marveled at this unprecedented experience. They stood up from their seats, honored Sakyamuni with their palms pressed together, and withdrew to one side. At that time, there was a bodhisattva mahasattva called Mahapratibhana, who, realizing that the devas, humans, and asuras of the entire world were puzzled, addressed the Buddha saying, "O Bhagavat, why has this jeweled stupa emerged from the earth, and why has this voice come forth from it?" Then the Buddha told Bodhisattva Mahapratibhana, "The Tathagata is in this jeweled stupa. In the remote past, immeasurable, incalculable thousands of myriads of kotis of worlds away in the east, there was a land called Ratna Visuddha. In that land, there was a Buddha called Prabhutaratna. When this Buddha was practicing the bodhisattva path in his previous lives, he made a great vow, saying, quote, 'If I become a Buddha, after my parinirvana, if the Lotus Sutra is being taught anywhere in all the lands of the 10 directions, my stupa shall appear there, so that this sutra may be heard, and in order that I might bear testimony to it and praise it with the word splendid.'" After the Buddha had perfected the path, and immediately before his parinirvana, he addressed the monks among the great assembly of devas and humans, saying, quote, "After my parinirvana, anyone who wishes to pay me homage should build a great stupa." If there is anyone teaching the Lotus Sutra anywhere in the world of the 10 directions, this Buddha makes a jeweled stupa emerge out of the ground in that place through his transcendent powers and the power of his vow. He is in the stupa, giving praise with the words, "Splendid, splendid." O Mahapratibhana, the Tathagata Prabhutaratna has now emerged from the earth, within his stupa, so that he may hear the Lotus Sutra and give praise with the words, "Splendid, splendid." At that time, Bodhisattva Mahapratibhana spoke to the Buddha through the Tathagata's transcendent powers, saying, quote, "O Bhagavat, we all want to see this Buddha's form." The Buddha answered Bodhisattva Mahasattva Mahapratibhana, saying, quote, "This Buddha, Prabhutaratna, made a great vow, saying, quote, whenever my jeweled stupa appears in the presence of a Buddha, in order to hear the Lotus Sutra, if that Buddha wants to show my form to the fourfold assembly, he should gather into one place all his magically created forms that are teaching the Dharma in the worlds of the 10 directions. After that, my form will appear. O Mahapratibhana, I shall now gather all my magical created forms who are teaching the Dharma in the worlds of the 10 directions." Mahapratibhana spoke to the Buddha, saying, "O Bhagavat, we also strongly wish to see the Bhagavat's magically created forms, to honor and pay homage to them." Then the Buddha emitted a ray of light from the tuft of white hair between his eyebrows, and they immediately saw the Buddhas in 500 myriads of kotis of nayutas of land in the eastern direction, equal in number to the sands of the Ganges River. In these lands the soil was of crystal, and adorned with treasure trees and jeweled garments. And these lands were full of innumerable thousands of myriads of kotis of bodhisattvas. Jeweled drapes were hung everywhere, and were covered with jeweled nets. All the Buddhas in these lands were teaching the Dharma in most harmonious voices. They also saw immeasurable thousands of myriads of kotis of bodhisattvas, filling all the lands and teaching the Dharma to sentient beings. The other directions, to the south, north, and west, the 4 intermediary directions, and the upper and lower regions, were also illuminated by the ray of light emitted from the tuft of white hair between the Buddha's eyebrows. And they were also exactly like this. Then all the Buddhas in the 10 directions each addressed the assembly of bodhisattvas, saying, quote, "O sons of a virtuous family, we will now go to the place where Sakyamuni is in the Saha world, and pay homage to the jeweled stupa of the Tathagata Prabhutaratna." At that time, the Saha world was immediately purified. The earth was of lapis lazuli, adorned with jeweled trees, its road laid out like a chessboard, and bordered with golden cords. And there were no villages, towns, cities, oceans, rivers, mountains, streams, forests, or groves. Very precious incense was burning. Mandarava flowers were spread everywhere on the earth, and it was covered with jeweled nets and drapes from which jeweled bells hung. With the exception of this assembly, the devas and human beings were all moved to other lands. Then the Buddhas each took one great bodhisattva as an attendant, and arrived under a jeweled tree in the Saha world. Each jeweled tree was 500 yojanas in height, and adorned with branches, leaves, blossoms, and fruits in their proper turn. Under all these jeweled trees were lion seats, 5 yojanas in height, that were adorned with great jewels. The Buddhas each sat cross-legged on these seats. They sat one after another in this way, filling the great manifold cosmos. Yet the separate forms of Sakyamuni Buddha of even one direction had not all arrived yet. At that time, Sakyamuni Buddha, wanting to be able to receive all of his magically created forms, transformed and purified 200 myriads of kotis of nayutas of lands in each of the world systems in the 8 directions. There were no hells, hungry ghosts, animals, or asuras, and all the devas and humans were moved to other lands. In these transformed lands the earth was made of lapis lazuli, and adorned with jeweled trees. These trees were 500 yojanas in height, and were adorned with branches, leaves, blossoms, and fruits in their proper turn. Under every tree was a jeweled lion seat, 5 yojanas in height, which was adorned with various jewels. There were no oceans, rivers, or great mountain kings, such as Mount Musalinda, Mount Mahamusalinda, Mount Kakravada, Mount Mahakakravada, or Mount Sumeru. The lands were all made into one Buddha world throughout. The jeweled earth was level and covered everywhere with jewel-studded drapes. Banners and umbrellas were set up. Precious incense was burning, and heavenly jeweled flowers covered the ground everywhere. Then Sakyamuni Buddha again transformed and purified 200 myriads of kotis of nayutas of lands in each of the 8 directions, so that the Buddhas could come and sit. There were no hells, hungry ghosts, animals, or asuras, and the devas and humans were moved to other lands. In the transformed lands, the earth was of lapis lazuli and adorned with jeweled trees. The trees were 500 yojanas in height and were adorned with branches, leaves, blossoms, and fruits in their proper turn. Under these trees were jeweled lion seats that were 5 yojanas in height and decorated with great jewels. There were no oceans, rivers, or great mountain kings, such as Mount Musalinda, Mount Mahamusalinda, Mount Kakravada, Mount Mahakakravada, or Mount Sumeru. The lands were all made into one Buddha world throughout. The jeweled earth was level and covered everywhere with jewel-studded drapes. Banners and umbrellas were set up. Precious incense was burning, and heavenly jeweled flowers covered the ground everywhere. Then the magically created forms of Sakyamuni Buddha, which had been teaching the Dharma in the hundreds of thousands of myriads of kotis of nayutas of lands in the east, equal in number to the sands of the Ganges River, gathered here. In this way, all the Buddhas in the 10 directions gradually came until all were assembled, sitting in the 8 directions. At that time, these Buddha Tathagatas filled 400 myriads of kotis of nayutas of lands in each direction. Then, sitting on the lion seats under the jewel trees, the Buddhas each dispatched their attendants with hands full of jeweled flowers to inquire after Buddha Sakyamuni, saying, "O son of a virtuous family, you should approach the Buddha Sakyamuni on Mount Grittakuta and give him a greeting, saying, quote, 'Are you without illness and pain, and are you full of vigor and at ease? And are the assemblies of bodhisattvas and shravakas all at ease or not?' Then, having paid homage to the Buddha by scattering him with these jeweled flowers, say this to him: 'The Buddha so-and-so wishes you to open this jeweled stupa.' All the other Buddhas dispatched their messengers like this. Then the Buddha Sakyamuni saw that his magically created forms had already gathered and were each sitting on a lion's seat. And he heard that all the Buddhas also wanted him to open the treasured stupa. Immediately rising, he hovered in the air, and the entire fourfold assembly rose and gazed attentively at the Buddha with their palms pressed together. Thereupon, Sakyamuni Buddha opened the entrance to the 7-jeweled stupa with his right finger. There was a tremendous sound, as if the bar and lock to the gateway of a large city were being pushed aside. Then immediately the entire gathering saw the Tathagata Prabhutaratna in the jeweled stupa, sitting on a lion's seat as if he were in meditation, his body whole and undecomposed. They heard him say, "Splendid, splendid. The Buddha Sakyamuni is teaching the Lotus Sutra, and I have come in order to hear it." At that time, the fourfold assembly saw the Buddha, who had entered parinirvana immeasurable thousands of myriads of kotis of kalpas ago, speaking those words. They praised this unprecedented experience and scattered heavenly jeweled flowers upon the Buddhas Prabhutaratna and Sakyamuni. Then, from within the stupa, the Buddha Prabhutaratna offered half of his seat to the Buddha Sakyamuni, saying, "O Sakyamuni Buddha, please take a seat here." The Buddha Sakyamuni immediately entered the stupa and sat cross-legged on half of the seat. Thereupon, the great assembly saw the two Tathagatas sitting cross-legged on the lion's seat in the seven-jeweled stupa, and they each thought thus, quote, "The Buddhas are seated far away. O Tathagata, we entreat you to use your transcendent powers so that we may be in the air together with you." The Buddha Sakyamuni immediately moved the entire fourfold assembly into the air through his transcendent powers and addressed them with a great voice, saying, quote, "Who in the Saha world is able to extensively teach the Lotus Sutra? It is now the right time. The Tathagata will enter parinirvana before long, and the Buddha wants to transmit this Lotus Sutra to you." Thereupon, the Buddha, wanting to further elaborate upon the meaning of this, spoke these verses. Although the great sage, the Bhagavat, entered parinirvana long ago, he has been abiding in a jeweled stupa, and he has now come for the sake of the Dharma. Why is it that people do not strive for the Dharma? Although this Buddha entered parinirvana incalculable kalpas ago, because it is difficult to encounter, he listens to the Dharma wherever it is taught. The original vow of this Buddha was, quote, "After my parinirvana, I will always listen to the Dharma, wherever it may be." My magically created forms, incalculable as the sands of the Ganges River, have come to hear the Dharma and see the Tathagata Prabhutaratna who has entered nirvana. Each Buddha form, having abandoned his beautiful land, disciples, devas, humans, nagas, and ritual tributes, has come here so that the Dharma may abide forever. In order to seat all these Buddhas, I transferred immeasurable beings and purified the lands through my transcendent powers. And each of these Buddhas settled under a jewel tree, as lotus blossoms adorn a limpid, cool pond. Under every jewel tree was a lion's seat on which the Buddhas sat, radiating light, as a great bonfire blazes in the dark of the night. They emitted a subtle fragrance from their bodies, which filled the lands of the 10 directions. Sentient beings who smelled this fragrance were overcome with unsurpassed joy, like branches of a small tree being blown by a great wind. Through this skillful means, I enabled the Dharma to abide forever. I tell the great assembly that after my nirvana, whoever can preserve and recite this sutra should now individually make a declaration in the presence of the Buddhas. Although the Buddha Prabhutaratna entered parinirvana long ago, through his great vow he has roared the lion's roar. The Tathagata Prabhutaratna, I myself, and all the magically created forms who have gathered here should know this intention. O heirs of the Buddhas, whoever is able to preserve the Dharma should make a great vow so that it may abide forever. Whoever is able to preserve the teaching of this sutra will thus honor me and Prabhutaratna. The Buddha Prabhutaratna always roams the 10 directions in a jeweled stupa in order to hear this sutra. He also honors all the transformed Buddhas who have come here and who adorn all the worlds with light. Whoever teaches this sutra will see me, the Tathagata Prabhutaratna, and the transformed Buddhas. O sons of a virtuous family, each of you must carefully consider this. This is indeed a difficult matter. make a great vow accordingly. It is not really difficult to teach all of the other sutras, the number of which is equal to the sands of the Ganges River. It is not difficult to take Mount Sumeru and throw it to another quarter, over innumerable Buddha worlds. It is also not difficult to shake free the manifold cosmos with one toe and throw it far into another distant world. It is not difficult to stand on the highest summit of the world and teach the other innumerable sutras for the sake of sentient beings. However, it will indeed be difficult to teach this sutra in the troubled world after the Buddha's nirvana. It is not difficult for anyone to grasp empty space and wander around with it, but it will certainly be difficult to copy and preserve this sutra and cause others to copy it after my nirvana. It is not really difficult to put the great earth on a toenail and ascend with it to the world of the Brahmas. However, it will indeed be difficult to recite this sutra even for a moment in the troubled world after the Buddha's nirvana. It is not really difficult to enter into the conflagration at the time of the close of a kalpa, carrying hay on your back and yet not be burned. It certainly will be difficult to preserve this sutra and teach it to even a single person after my nirvana. It is indeed not really difficult for anyone to preserve the 84,000 treasure houses of the Dharma and the 12-fold scriptures and teach them so that the listeners can attain the 6 transcendent powers. It will indeed be difficult for anyone to hear and accept this sutra and to ask about its meaning after my nirvana. It is not really difficult for people to do such beneficial things as teaching the Dharma and making thousands of myriads of kotis of immeasurable, incalculable sentient beings, numbering as many as the sands of the Ganges River, attain arhatship and perfect the 6 transcendent powers. It will certainly be difficult to preserve such a sutra as this after my nirvana. I have extensively taught many sutras in incalculable lands, from the beginning until now, for the sake of the Buddha path. And yet among them, this sutra is the best. If anyone preserves it, he preserves the form of the Buddha. O sons of a virtuous family, those who preserve and recite this Lotus Sutra after my nirvana must now individually make a declaration in the presence of the Buddhas. It is hard to preserve this sutra. If anyone preserves it, even for a single moment, I shall truly rejoice. All of the other Buddhas will do so also. Such people as these are praised by the Buddhas. They are courageous. They are persevering. They are known as those who follow the rules of good conduct and carry out ascetic practices. Subsequently, they quickly attain the highest Buddha path. Those in the future who recite and preserve this sutra are the true heirs of the Buddha and abide in the stage of purity. Those who can understand its meaning after the Buddha's nirvana will become the eyes of the world for devas and humans. Those who teach it, even for a moment, in the fearful world, will be revered by all the devas and humans.